It's safe to say that 2020 has been not good. Very, very not good. And we're not quite through it yet. So for today's video, I wanted to share a little joy with some of the books that always bring me happiness in case they might do the same for some of you and help you get through the rest of this year. Hey Word Nerds, happy Tuesday. So today we were talking about book recommendations, which is kind of tricky for me to do because I have been in a reading slump pretty much all year, and a writing slump, but that's a whole other thing. But lately I've been reading a book that has been making my heart all kinds of happy, so I figured I would put together a list of some of the books that have done that for me in the past, in case any of you are looking for a bit of a pick-me-up in your TBR pile, some books that can just bring the happy, leave you feeling nice and good, and like you have the strength to get through the rest of whatever 2020 has in store for us. I guess a bit of a spoiler warning on this because the implication with any of the books I'm about to mention is that they have a happy ending, otherwise they would not be very happy books. So go into that with that in mind, and here we go. Although now that I'm thinking of it, for the first book, I haven't actually finished reading it. I am just very, very confident that it's going to be a happy ending, and that is The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Cloon. Emma recommended this one to me. It's been on my TBR list forever, so I'm glad she nudged me to pick it up. I am so glad I did. It is just a happy, nice, wonderful, wholesome book about a man who works in a department of magical children, kind of as a social worker. He's going to all of these orphanages and seeing how these magical children are doing in the care of the people who are looking out for them in these homes, which aren't great, and there's a lot of bureaucracy, and the main character is just very by the book. I like rules and regulations. And then he goes to the house in the Cerulean Sea and meets Arthur and his 6 magical wards who are just... It's nice, guys. It's just really, really nice. I haven't finished it, so there's not even that much I can say in terms of where it all ends up. It is kind of a very light fantasy in that it's our world mostly. The characters are magical, and that just is what it is. They do use their powers, but in a very kind of mundane way of this is just how we're going about our lives. And yeah, it is just a very nice found family book about characters discovering who they are, getting more comfortable in their own skin, and I love everything about it. I haven't finished reading it yet because reading has been going a little bit slower for me more recently, but I am loving every single page, and I'm sure this is going to be one I reread time and time again in the future. Speaking of books I've read again and again and again, let's talk about The Phantom Tollbooth by Norman Juster. This has been one of my favorite books for so long. It is just weird and wacky and wonderful. The first couple lines on the back copy is, "For Milo, everything's a bore. When a toll booth mysteriously appears in his room, he drives through it because he's got nothing better to do. But on the other side, things seem different." And they are, and there's not a ton of explanation for it. Milo just goes into this world where everything's a little bit more literal, and it was one of those books that really made me think and was just kind of silly and fun and whimsical. Throughout the book, Milo and his faithful dog Talk are on this quest to rescue Rhyme and Reason, which do not seem like characters who belong in this particular land. Like at some point he ends up on the Island of Conclusions, and yes, you get there by jumping, and it's just that kind of humor and playing on words and numbers and all of the things that kind of seemed boring in school and making it more fun. I'd probably say it's about a middle grade, but I still love it as an adult, and you should definitely check it out. And then a book that the Word Nerds have recommended many, many, many times, and that is Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell. This book is like a warm blanket and coming home and all of those nice things. I read it years ago in one sitting. It is a YA or kind of new adult contemporary. It is about Kath, who goes off to college for the first time with her twin sister Ren, but has to figure out kind of who she is aside from all of that. And she is writing this fan fiction, and she meets some pretty wonderful people that aren't the type of people she normally would have spent time with, and really kind of figures out who she is along the way. It is about family and new relationships and just discovering what it is about yourself that you love and who you want to be and all of that. I'll end this here because the Word Nerds have talked about this book a lot, but if you haven't read it yet, you should. And then for our last 2 books, we are going to my favorite genre that's not really a genre, or maybe it's a sci-fi subgenre. I don't know. Humans who are slightly more qualified than we are to go to space. So both of these books are set more or less in our world. The first one, The Martian, is kind of in the near future where we have the technology to go to Mars, and then the main character is left there. His crew thinks he has died, so he is left on his own as they head back to Earth, and he has to figure out how to survive, but it's not as depressing as it sounds. It is such a funny, wonderful book that to me is kind of about humanity coming together and solving problems and figuring out how to do the things that we thought were impossible before. And for 2020, there is kind of a nice note of isolation and those feelings that I'm sure a lot of us are dealing with right now. Plus, if you're in a reading slump like I am, there's a pretty great movie about it that I also really enjoyed. And then the other book, which is actually set in the near past instead of the near future, is The Calculating Stars by Mary Robinette Rowell. This is a book set in, I think, the 50s, when humanity has this big crisis. A meteoroid crashes into Washington, D.C., obliterating parts of America and potentially making the Earth uninhabitable for humans in the future. So the space race begins early, and all of these characters have to start working together in order to figure out how we are going to leave this planet behind and go on to other things. But the main character is a calculator in that she works for NASA and is solving all of these computer problems and is right there with the space program, but she really wants to be an astronaut, along with a bunch of other really qualified women who keep getting dismissed because it's the 50s and the 60s and women can't be astronauts and all of that nonsense. But at the end of the day, it is a really inspiring, uplifting book about these characters' struggles and humanity's struggles as a whole. And maybe that is not something you particularly want to be thinking about in 2020, but for me, it is just a really nice feeling that makes me feel like things are going to get better, we can fix this, we're going to get through it, and I think that's worth focusing on. So that's it for me today, but if you have any book recommendations for books that make you feel lighter, make you feel a little bit happier, please let me know in the comments down below, and I will absolutely check those out. And don't forget to join us on Sunday, where we are going to be talking about all things plot as we continue to get ready for NaNoWriMo. In the meantime, happy reading, happy writing, and I'll see you next time.